Welcome to Reading the World. I'm Ali Al-Hajji. This is a podcast about literature, language, culture, translation, and the humanities as ways of reading the world more carefully. Today's conversation asks how a made thing means, not how to become more creative, but what actually travels from the person who makes a work to the person standing in front of it. When someone paints, writes, composes, carves, how much of what they intend survives the crossing to an audience? And what happens to that meaning when culture, psychology, faith, and translation get between the maker and the reader? The claim on the table is a strong one, that a work carries an intended meaning that's at least partly recoverable, neither fixed nor infinitely open, that some readings are simply wrong. My guest makes that claim from the maker's chair, not the scholar's. In just under an hour, we are going to test how far it holds. My guest is Rick Sorensen, an artist and author based in Boise, Idaho. He holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Montserrat College of Art in Beverly, Massachusetts. In 2023, he published Art, the Church's Response, which examines creativity and the arts through biblical, historical, and aesthetic lenses. For about 13 years, he ran Far East Art Imports, introducing handmade Bhutanese paper to the American market, work that earned him in the paper trade the name the Bhutan Paper Guy. He writes a Substack and a blog called The Creative Perspective, where his central subject is meaning, how a maker's intention travels to an audience, and where interpretation goes right or wrong. And from years of teaching drawing to adults, he has come to argue that what blocks creativity is more often fear than a lack of talent. What makes him a real interlocutor for this show is that he doesn't hold his position only by instinct. He engages the argument directly. He separates explicit from implicit meaning. He draws on Tyler Tharp's idea of a quasi-legal transaction between artist and audience, and he argues in print against the view which he attributes to the textbook practices of looking, that a work's creator is unimportant. This is a genuine disagreement, not a naive one. Rick, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be talking today.
Me too. Rick, I want to start with the claim itself. You write against the idea which you attribute to the textbook practices of looking, that a work's creator is unimportant, and that audiences can't determine an artist's meaning. Put your counterclaim in your own words. What exactly do you think a completed work still carries from the person who made it?
If we back up a second and thinking about how we psychologists have identified the three main ways we interpret meaning. And the first way is that we can see the artist's intention in what they do. The second way is that we have our own ideas about what the person did. And then the third way is that we see the artist's intention, but we have additional ideas that come to our mind about it. And I think the third way is the most common way that everybody interprets things. I think we want to know what someone's intention in what they make, whether that's a visual art, whether it's music, whether we're watching a movie, any art form, we want to know what the intention is of its maker. I think that's just a human, natural intention that we have. But there will also be additional ideas that come to our mind, even if we can see what the artist's intention or the author's intention is. And so that sometimes can confuse us. Now, what's going on in the West, in both England and America, is that the maker's intention is disregarded and it's only the audience's idea in whatever way they are geared.
And this is a good point to introduce Roland Barthes' idea about the death of the author. If we can kind of
Okay.
talk about it a little bit just for the audience, and because you said it's in the West and North America, this is especially a characteristic nowadays. So if you can tell us a bit, if you can elaborate on the idea and how you disagree with it and in what ways. And I have many questions actually for you in this regard, because this is an interesting topic for me as a professor at KSU. I teach literary theory and criticism, and we usually talk about the death of the author and the meaning that the text carries, the meaning, the text or any artistic work in that regard.
Right.
So, yes, go ahead.
Well, yes, I had to read this when I was going to art school. So I'm not unfamiliar with the whole take on postmodernism and how it has influenced our way of thinking and the disregard of the maker. And you're only interpreting the text according to your own prejudices and biases, disregarding what the intention because the artist's intention, and I'm going to always be saying artist in our talk because I can't, but I'm meaning that for all the art forms. The composer, whatever you want to think of it, it's the maker that makes a work that now we are responding to. If this maker didn't make a work, we would have nothing to talk about.
Now,
and so in thinking about the death of the author, there would be nothing to talk about if the author didn't make that. We would only be having conversations. We wouldn't talk about how we are responding to the intention of the maker in presenting whatever they're presenting.
So let's move to the next question, to the second question. We don't kind of want to linger on the death of the author thing, although it's interesting and also brings another question, which is a side question, like a follow-up. Now, if we kind of go with your theory here, which is against Roland Barthes' theory about the death of the author and the meaning in the text contained within the text, how can we understand the intention of an author if there is a period of time between us and the author? I'm sorry, I have been mispronouncing Barthes and saying Barthes. He's Barthes, so this is a note from my team.
I think that's a good question. Let's see. I'm just trying to think of an example. Shakespeare is an easy one, I guess, to bring up.
Sure.
Because, almost all the world has read or seen in movies at least one play by Shakespeare. So there's some familiarity. And so the interpretations that we see there's many interpretations that have happened of it, every play that Shakespeare wrote from the time that he presented it during his lifetime to our time. And some of them have been faithful to what was, because it's all written out, then we can say everything that their actors said.
Okay.
But the meanings of phrases and words have changed over the centuries. And so I remember seeing, this was maybe 15 years ago, I'm guessing. There was a documentary I saw of a play being, I think it was Romeo and Juliet, that was being presented in London. But they got people from off the street to come and be part of this play. And it was an actor that had done Shakespeare before, but this was his first time directing people. So,
Okay.
that helped the drama for the documentary. But so he had to explain what some of the phrases meant
Mm-hmm.
from the time that Shakespeare said it and how we would think of it today, so that when they said those same words, they would understand the meaning of it.
Yes.
And they went through, practices. It was the 4-week practice before they presented
Mm-hmm.
this play. And the whole point of the documentary was that anybody could do this. And so it was enjoyable to watch. And so in thinking of something like that, where you're now trying to experience in play form what was presented during Shakespeare's time, and now we're hearing it in our time,
Mm-hmm.
we can still get the impact of that. We can understand at least the general idea.
Mm-hmm.
Some things may have to be researched or explained,
Mm-hmm.
but we still understand the general idea of it.
Okay. I
Say,
get it. Yeah.
say the death of, in Julius Caesar, there's
Yes.
the betrayal that happens to Julius Caesar before he dies. And then, you see all of that. We can still experience that emotion of betrayal that Julius Caesar did in that story form. So at the very least, we get the general idea.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the whole thesis is meaning partly survives the crossing, and is that correct?
Yes, I think that we can get at least the general idea. And so each variation of that is if it's presented now in modern language,
Mm-hmm.
is still giving us that general idea. It hasn't changed the meaning, not in any significant way.
You work from the maker's chair rather than the scholar's. What does making things for years let you see about how meaning travels that reading about art might not?
I guess as I have researched art and trying to understand my education, I've read everything I could as it pertains to creating, as well as the experience of creating something. And so I see that because of that,
Mm-hmm.
there's an idea that an artist wants to get across to their audience, whatever that's going to be. And oftentimes, visual artists will leave things very open so that other audience members will add to their interpretation of it. But it's not totally open because there's a intention that they're presenting.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so they want, whether that's a feeling, some visual art is wanting to evoke a feeling, just like music does. And so I guess I'm thinking of Bach, the music of Bach. We
Okay.
could talk about Beethoven too. They're all many centuries ago.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And we can hear an orchestra portray the music that Bach created,
Mm-hmm.
and we can have the same emotion come up in us from hearing this music as the
Mm-hmm.
original audience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so everything that Bach puts into his music, we can receive in the way that he intends.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in thinking about how things change, I know that a lot of orchestras, a lot of symphonies do not necessarily follow the exact music that was done when it was originally done. There's modifications, there's things that are left out. And
But a
so,
kind of a follow-up question here, a quick question.
yes,
Do we really feel what Bach's first audience felt?
I think we can presume it because of the music itself. The work is what we are experiencing. So the work itself gives us most of the clues on how to receive it. And then there's been enough history written about these great works of art that we can see what the original audience experienced. I think that's been written a lot by, or we can read a lot of the reactions by Beethoven that Beethoven has, or the biographers have written about the reaction of Beethoven's audience. So we can see what the general receptivity was from that audience, and then compare it to how we received it. And in most cases, they will line
yes,
up.
the differences also between recording and live is a big issue here in terms of experience and feelings. You trained at Montserrat, made
Yes.
work held in collections, and then spent about 13 years importing handmade Bhutanese paper to American artists. What did handling that paper, its making, its origin, teach you about how much of a material's meaning survives when it's lifted out of the place it came from?
That's a good question. How I started importing the handmade paper was just by accident. I was on a tour of Asia with my dad after I graduated from Montserrat, and Bhutan was one of the countries we went to. And on the tour in Bhutan, then the last place we visited was this handmade paper factory. It was just a small building, a home that was converted into a place where they made the handmade paper. And so I saw the whole process of it being made, and then the very first shipment of the Bhutanese paper out of the country was being prepared to be shipped out. And that was going to England. And so I was touching this paper. There's a silkiness and feel to the Bhutanese paper that it's different than other papers. And this is under the category of rice paper, which is just a broad category. Most everything made in Asia would fall under rice paper. And so I was filling this paper, and my dad came into the room and asked me, who would like this paper? I said, well, just about every artist that I know.
Okay, that's great.
And so he said, why don't you import it? And so that began me considering the idea of doing that. And so that's what happened. Make a long story short.
No, you can elaborate. It's okay. It's a great story, actually, because you are a pioneer in this kind of business.
So, going to art school did not train me to be a businessman.
Of course, yeah.
So I had to learn everything from the ground up. Not only a businessman, but I had to learn how to be an international businessman. And everything I read about international business was only about finances. It wasn't about what I was actually doing. Paper is important for books.
Sure.
And so the paper in the West is very acid friendly, so it would deteriorate very quickly.
Sure.
So artists have over time become concerned about the economical quality of their materials, especially in the last 40 years. So they're looking for things that last a long time.
Sure. Which brings us to your book, actually, Art, the Church's Response. Your book, Art, the Church's Response, came from a friend's suggestion.
Yes, it was.
Setting the faith frame aside for a moment, what question were you actually trying to answer when you sat down to write it?
Well, after my friend suggested this to me, then I began to seriously think about it. And so the first question that came to my mind was, well, if I were to write this to a Christian audience, what is it they would want? And the main question would be, what does the Bible say about that? And then, so I began to look at what the Bible will say about different art topics, and even look at the Hebrew and the Greek words that were used for that. So I'll give you an example. In the first sentence of Genesis that says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." So I wanted to know what the Hebrew word create was.
Uh-huh.
So I had to look that up. And I saw that it was to create is as a process. So in the beginning, God created through the process, or God, through the process of creating, brought the heavens and the earth. Well, this makes you think about things a little differently when you look at what the original word says. In English is kind of a sloppy language sometimes. It doesn't give you always the nuances of various different languages. And so this made me think about things differently and just looking at the original words meant. So that's what I began to do is I began to think about, how to present these ideas in a way that would challenge most people's assumption.
There is a good question about translation here. If we say that English is sloppy, is meaning lost in every translation or recoverable?
I think it's recoverable. I think we can get a general idea, and then there's words in some languages that have a more nuanced thing that when we discover those nuances, it only expands the meaning to us. It doesn't change it. It was like a month ago, I was on YouTube just kind of looking at it, and I came across this woman that was talking about Dostoevsky,
Yes.
which I haven't read much of him, just seen, different sections. But she was talking about the difference of the Russian.
Yes, Russian
And she,
original and the English translation, yeah.
yes. And I guess there's 3 primary English translations of his work. And so she gave the original Russian
Mm-hmm.
in the section she was talking about. Then she looked at each of the ways the translations address that same passage. And so I don't remember which book of his that she was looking at. So I'm sorry I can't be more precise. One of the words she highlighted, and this is what
Yes.
what kept in, or why I've kept it in mind because it really interested me, was there was a translation that was in the passage. It was closet that was used in the English word, in the
Mm-hmm.
American English word, and a closet is a small room where we hang our clothes, but which is different than the English word for wardrobe that conveys a different sense. And then she was saying that really the sense of the Russian itself is conveying more of a small room, not a
Uh-huh.
closet. So that gives you a different sense of what's being done. And then she included how there's lots of different idioms that he uses.
Yes.
And so which an idiom doesn't necessarily change the intention of a meaning for why it's being presented, because you can understand that in most cases, but in understanding more the nuances of the idiom, then it helps to, or it
Sure.
enlarges your understanding.
Yeah, there are. Yes, go ahead. You want to say something?
So just in thinking of translation from that point of view,
Mm-hmm.
which then you can get the general idea that you're in this small room, and you're thinking in the American sense that this small room may have clothes in it, and that's not necessarily the case. So you have this idea, but it's not accurate because of the misunderstanding of the translator.
Yes. And there are so many examples also when you look at translations, for example, from Arabic to English, for example.
Yes.
There are instances, for example, of what I call over translation, overwriting in translation,
Mm-hmm.
which is exactly explication, but it's adding more materials to explain something. So, for example, if we have an item, let's say, we say in Arabic, for example, we refer to a night, a special night during Ramadan. We call it Laylat al-Qadr, which its literal translation means the night of power. And it's a spiritual night for prayers and for praying and worshiping and spiritual things. So if you convey the meaning, just you said the night of power without adding materials to it, which is the 20-something of Ramadan, and it's the night where the Quran descended to earth and something like this, maybe an English reader wouldn't understand what it implies. So a solution would be either to add more information to it, attach more information to it, or add a footnote, actually, in the translation.
Right. Sure.
Yes. So I'm curious to ask you this question. Since you brought the Dostoevsky example and the different meanings and translations between the Russian and the English, would you prefer a translator inserting information, that kind of explanatory information into the text itself, or would you prefer to see it as a footnote?
I probably would be fine with it being a footnote and giving more of the context of it.
Sure.
Another example I'm thinking of as you're talking, I'm thinking of this. When I first started to learn about Chinese art and the principles behind Chinese art, there's a concept that was first laid down in about 6th century AD in China about the principles of painting. And it was broken down into 6 categories. And the first 2 are the most important to the Chinese way of thinking. And so the first principle is, if I can remember the Chinese pronunciation, it's Sheng Teng. Oh, that's the first one. I just forgot the second half of it. Let's see. The first principle is Qi Teng. And so forgive me for butchering Chinese.
I can't say whether I forgive you or not because I'm not a native speaker of Chinese. So
yes,
the audience would have.
I just assume that I'm butchering it. So
I have no idea.
So the Chinese principle of Qi, which is spirit, is just a broad understanding of Qi. But to the Chinese way of thinking, that is a much deeper concept. It conveys the idea of not only spirit or spiritual, but of life. And tongue, when it's combined with tongue, is resonance or consonant, harmonious. Oh, there's something else, but in line with those words.
Okay.
And so now you have, and vitality is connected to Qi. That was what I was missing. So if now you have this harmonious, resonating, vital energy for life. And so in trying to convey this idea, then the various books on Chinese art that I read usually don't go into the deeper aspects of that. There was one book I came across that broke down the way that these words, when they combine together, it conveys the deepness of the meaning that's intended. And
yes.
And so the idea that I knew that the vitality that is conveyed was brought to a greater depth when I understood how these words all combine together in a more specific way. And my understanding got deeper because of that. And this concept actually has conveyed a change in how I looked at art in general and works that people make. that what I see because of the Chinese influencing me is that the good works have this vitality that we respond to. Bad work doesn't have vitality and we dismiss it. But the good works, we go, we may not have the words to describe, or our words are very limited. Sometimes it's like, oh, that's good. It could be that much. We are identifying in these types of things that there's this vitality that this work has that is deeper than anything else. And so when we are listening to Beethoven or Bach, we are picking up on that vitality that they put into that music. And we are experiencing that today. And
That's a
so
great example. That's a
that
great
vitality
example.
is always what we respond to in any work that has it. And that the Chinese taught me that it is our job as a maker to put that life, that vitality into the work. That's what gives it a long life. Then it's like, yeah, we see it, but it doesn't touch us.
And that's a good example. You draw a line between two kinds of meaning. You separate a work's explicit meaning, what the maker intended and gave, from implicit or associated meaning that a viewer brings. Walk me through one of your own works, the more specific the better, where you can point to both. Here is what I put in, and here is what viewers added that I never intended.
So, well, the fine explicit is the general idea or theme that's put across. So, like in Star Wars, that's basically the first movie. It was basically about the triumph of good over evil. And that's a basic idea that we see in many movies and in many books. So, let's see, in my work, probably, well, in my book that I wrote,
Yes.
that would probably be the best example, at least the most recent, that the explicit meaning is what I wrote. And the implicit meaning are things I implied that will point the reader to whatever the idea I'm putting across. So I guess the example that comes to my mind that I mention most often is that the next point I make after Genesis 1:1 is that a few verses down later, God says, let us make man in our own image. Now, part of that image, and this is what I tell people, part of that image, as we saw in Genesis 1:1, where God reveals himself as creator, he's putting this into us. Let us make man in our own image. Part of that image is that he is creator, so we are creators. We have to create. First started in someone's imagination, it was brought into reality. And every civilization. And so we can see just in what people do, in whatever the field it is, the idea started in their imagination. And then, then we live in it now. Or those many ideas developed into the ideas that we live in today. One of the things that brought this to my mind is that there's an experience that every artist that I know has experienced, and you can ask the same question for the ones that you know. The artist will meet somebody and they say, oh, I'm an artist. They're just saying, this is what I do. The person that they're meeting has this involuntary reaction. They say, I'm not creative. I can't even draw a stick figure. I can't even draw a straight line. Now, the artist is not asking about this for this information, but the person that they meet feels compelled to tell them that they're not creative. I got thinking, why do they have this compulsion? And I think it goes back to to what I just said. They feel that they should be creative, but they're not. And I can go into why they're not. But the whole thing that they feel that they should be, but they're not. So they
So
have to now make
in
this
one
excuse.
in one sentence, what if all people are creative, what blocks them?
Primarily it's fear. And so it's only through overcoming this fear and stepping out and trying and saying that it's okay to try and fail. You skills are learned. It takes
Yes.
time to develop skill. But they think that it has to be just perfect. And so there's different ways that you can help them overcome this. But that's really the source of it.
Sure. We tackled about what blocks creativity, but we didn't tackle talent. So we talked about skills and developing skills and how it relates to creativity. But what about talent? I'm looking for a short answer so we can move to the next segment.
Okay. Talent is there, and it's been written about all over the place in various art fields. But talent's only as good as the discipline that applies it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have discipline in your area, then talent only gets you so far, but the discipline gets you all the way.
That's great. Thank you. Now we are going to move to kind of a bit of steelman position, the position that you reject. Make the strongest case you can for the view and practices of looking, that the creator is unimportant, and the audience can't fix the artist's meaning. Where does that view get something right that your view has to reckon with?
I guess as I think about it, I think of a way to apply this is during a normal conversation between people. Doesn't have to be having meaning that is so deep. It can just be casual, like what we're talking. And so if we're talking and you're only receiving what I'm saying, but only hearing your own biases, then either that is a problem with me communicating, I'm not being clear enough, or the listener is not listening.
Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with the work of Elaine Scarry? So I can ask you a question about that relates to that argument.
Can you refresh my memory about it?
Elaine Scarry argues that beauty is not a report of the viewer's pleasure. It's a demand on the viewer's attention, a provocation towards attending better to what the object actually is. The beautiful object calls you to look again, not to confirm what you already felt. So the question I'd like to ask is weight, the term you use, a demand the work makes on your attention, or is it a feeling you are having?
I think, it's interesting you used a quote about beauty because I've just started thinking about writing a book on beauty.
Okay,
So
interesting.
I'm just now starting to try to gather materials and look at it. I haven't really done anything with it yet, but I'm starting to think in that direction.
Mhm.
So I think we talked about a good work having vitality. I think weight is another word that we could use about that. And so the weight of the work, I think, does make us stop and consider it. Maybe we're looking harder or deeper about it. We're considering it in a new way. There's different ways that we could talk about it like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're responding to the vitality that we see, that we're experiencing. And I think that's what makes us stop to consider it, to think about something we haven't seen or experienced in a way that we're now considering afresh. So it's one of the things I think about beauty is that it's partly spiritual. which is the reason why we have such a hard time giving definition, even giving words about beauty itself. And there's so many different ways of thinking about it because it's this metaphysical aspect that's combined with the tangible of what we experience. And so when we now come across something that we say is beautiful, that's really just a shorthand of us trying to describe this indescribable experience. So I do think that the weight is part of that. And there's many other words that we could do that, but I think it's kind of wrapped up in that.
Very interesting. What does your work help us read more carefully about the work?
That we can pay attention better. So I'm just thinking, when we look at something that someone's made, this is something that I've written about on my Substack, that a work is basically two parts. As I've evaluated it and I've read different things, it comes to basically two parts of a whole. And if we understand this, then it makes cooperating with an experience a little easier. And so the one part is the idea, what it's about. We want to know what something's about, so that's just a natural human thing. The other half of it is the way it's expressed. When something is expressed so perfectly, we go, that's good. We can see this in movies. We can see this in literature, in visual art, in music. The way it's expressed conveys this idea in such a way that that's just the right way to say it, to express it. If the expression is off, we say, oh, that's bad. You probably walked out of a movie at some time and thought or said to someone, that was a great idea, but they didn't pull it off. Everybody I give this example to always shakes their head yes. They never shake it no. And so the idea and the way it's expressed have to come together in this harmonious symphonic interplay. We go, oh, that's good. And so even coming back to what we've talked about before, even in translating, that's just an expression of the idea that's already existing. And we can tell when that expression is correct, especially if we know both languages, or we're just getting a basic expression, understanding of the expression that gives us the idea.
A quick question. Who decides the expression is off, you or the audience?
Well, how did you identify that the movie that you saw didn't pull it off? Because you've identified intuitively the idea. That was just an intuitive thing.
Sure.
And then you say they didn't pull it off. The way that it was expressed did not meet the potential of the idea. So the work itself gives us the clues. If we know how to read it, then we can see the clues in the work itself.
This opens another door of questions also about reading methodology, which we will not be tackling this time, maybe next time somehow if we can manage to meet again. But that's an interesting venue to explore also. Would you like to say anything, to add something?
No, just that we can identify a work and the idea behind it. It's not that hard. We do it naturally. Even the people that say that we can never know what a work is about, they'll go to a movie and say the exact same thing. They didn't pull it off. So their lived experience doesn't necessarily match their intellectual thought if you can't know about what the text is about.
Okay, great. Many thanks to Rick Sorensen for this conversation on how a made work means and on the distance between recovering what a maker intended and projecting our own wounds and our own cultures onto what we see. What I hope this episode leaves us with is not a settled answer, but a sharper question. When you next stand in front of a painting, a song, a poem, something you did not make and may not fully understand, how do you read it? Where does the maker's intent still press on you? Where does your own history press back? And where does cultural distance quietly decide what you are even able to see? Thank you for listening to Reading the World. I'm Ali Al-Hajji. Until next time, keep reading carefully.